Lomo Media needs you. We want you. The only good YouTuber is a dead YouTuber. I probably shouldn't say that. That's probably not a thing that I'm allowed to say. I don't know if we'll get demonetized for that. Guys, it's a bit. It's a joke. Everybody chill, like and subscribe.
Welcome to At the Movies, where we're talking about the 1997 film. We're moved up into the 90s finally. After 15 episodes, we're finally here. Starship Troopers, baby. Starship Troopers, a movie that for some reason I picked for us to talk about when I could have picked probably something else. But hey, we're here and we're in it.
Is this really episode 5 of season 2? Are we that deep into season 2 already?
I think it's episode 4.
Oh, we started with RoboCop, and then Blood Simple, then WNUF, then Raising Arizona.
This is episode 5. Yeah, I was right. Wow, we were right.
We're halfway through. That's crazy.
Yeah, I guess
the first season feels longer because we watched movies before we started recording the show, you know, but it's crazy that we're halfway through our
season 2 is halfway done, or just halfway started. However you want to look at life, it's up to you.
If we were watching Starship Troopers, if season 2 was Starship Troopers, we would be halfway into the film, which would be about an hour and 3 minutes.
We would still be trying to figure out the actual love relationship between myself and Aaron for the last 15 episodes to finally be able to get to the actual storyline. And while you're here to watch this, and you'd be like, wait, and then we would completely change what was happening to go into nothing but action, baby. Nothing but action.
Nothing but action. Yeah, so as Jimmy said, today we are talking the Paul Verhoeven film, the 1997 Starship Troopers. A movie that I think we both, based on our discussion, I think we both saw this relatively young.
Yeah.
What's your personal history with Starship Troopers?
So I saw it as a kid. So in 1997, I would have been 5 or 6, depending on how things rolled out. But yeah, I remember seeing it as a kid, and I just remember it being an action movie. I think I watched it with my dad. I remember it was on VHS tape. I remember having the VHS tape. I said that about RoboCop too. And I'm pretty sure I watched it with my dad, and he laughed a lot during it. I think I remember, and I was just there for the action. And then watching it as an adult, it's a completely different movie, and that's not something that you get to experience because, like, you get that like child memory of it, and then for what now that'd be 24 years since I've seen it. If I watched it when I was 6, 24 years later, this is a completely different movie to me. It doesn't even like the memory of watching it as a child is almost like erased now. It's gone. That nice naive. Oh, it's ruined. This movie ruined a perfectly good childhood memory. and now I just have the adult memory of Starship Troopers, and I hate it. I want to go back to when I was a kid.
I think I've seen this, I think this was probably the 3rd time I've seen this, and I would agree. The first time I saw it, I was too young to pick up on like the satire at all. I just thought it was like almost like I just almost kind of viewed it as like there's like some comedy, you know, like, oh, the kids are like stomping on cockroaches, like it's kind of funny, and you know, porch cat outside. Wish I could show the folks at home. There is a porch cat outside.
Nice.
So I thought it was kind of just like an sci-fi action movie with comedy, like you said. I remember specifically picking it up, like if somebody was showing it on TV. It must have been edited because this movie is fairly violent.
It's extremely gory once you go into it.
Yeah, for like not a horror movie, which is kind of surprising. But I remember the soldier being picked up by one of the flying bugs and carried to his nest, and then they execute him long distance so that he doesn't suffer. And in my mind, what I remember is the thing picking him up and like tearing his body apart, which doesn't happen, but that's probably because there are limbs flying everywhere in this movie. Not hard to conflate two different scenes where
especially
people get,
especially when those like flying bugs come over when they're defending that base, and it's like a razor just cutting off the heads. That bug comes flying and it's like and you just see the heads like all fall off. I was like, what the hell is happening? And I'm like, I watched this as a kid. I don't
Right,
even.
right.
I
It's
was
yeah,
like,
it's
what?
even everything, the impalements, like all of it. It's so bloody. Then I think I did see it as a teenager. I had the luxury of this because I think that if I didn't see it a second time, like when I was starting to understand satire, then I would also have watched this and been like, this is not the movie that I remember.
Yeah,
Because
that's what happened to
I
me.
do
It's
I
weird.
do start to kind of remember the only good bug is a dead bug and all of this propaganda throughout the film.
Do you want to
Um,
know more, Aaron? Would you like to know more? Do you want to know more? Would you want to know more?
click,
Click,
click.
click.
I would like to know more. I would like to. So the first thing I guess I'd like to point out is this is the first Verhoeven film we've watched since RoboCop, and you can draw a thick black line from the commercials in RoboCop to the propaganda, like the way this movie opens, and then also throughout the film sporadically they have these uh commercials. I guess
Yeah,
they
like
are
web ads.
commercials.
They're like web. They're like
They're
web
like
commercials, kind of.
right news updates that explain the war with bugs, and then there's also some like classic Verhoeven stuff that's just like the future is crazy and out of control. They're like televised execution at 6 p.m. Like that kind of thing. So you can definitely see our opinion about the movie aside, which I think is maybe a little mixed now, and I do want to get into. I do like that you can tell for sure that this is a Paul Verhoeven movie.
100%. It's got his stamp on it from those web ads to the way the future looks, just the way I mean, just from a technical aspect, you can definitely see this is a Verhoeven film. 100%.
So my biggest this isn't even a criticism, but I think that this is something that I felt that I don't know if you would agree with this or not too, but I know the weirdest thing about this movie to me is that the first half and the second half feel like completely different films. Um,
They could have easily been like standalone films. The second part of this film could have been Starship Troopers too.
right. And I think that if you cut so we talked about this. Basically the biggest weakness of the film for sure is that like none of the characters are really likable. None of the relationships you care about.
Nope.
So if you cut that part out of the first half of the movie and you just focus on the satire, and then the second part of the movie you cut maybe like 20 minutes of combat because the combat stuff's pretty good. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on, but it's like the movie's just way too long. It's
Yeah.
2 hours and 6 minutes.
It really
It
needed to
does
be
not need to
trimmed
be that
down
long.
100%. And it makes me wonder because normally when you go into production, the script's always longer than what the film comes out to be. So I'm just wondering, like, how much more was added until they like leaned out the script?
For sure.
Like that's
For
just
sure.
I'm
And
like thinking, I'm like, holy, was there more? And I to your point earlier, the main reason why I think it doesn't work like this when you build these character arcs, they're only successful if the audience or the viewer likes the character. They're like they only care about the character like other motivation or backstory if they actually feel invested in them. And then throughout the film, I didn't feel invested in anybody with the exception of a little bit of Dizzy. She
I
kind of
was
seems to be like the redeeming character throughout this because Rico is a terrible person. He has like the wrong motives to do everything in life. Carmen is just that like girl you just she's just something wrong about her, just the way that she thinks about like life and just ready to just spit out everybody and like I don't care about you now, Rico. I got what I want. And throughout the film you can kind of see her like she's always looking for the next best thing because if Rico didn't win on that football game, then she would have went with the other guy. Because it was
right.
just like, and it was that whole thing of like, oh well, this is better, so I'm taking it. Oh well, this is better, I'm taking it. And you're just like, I was like, I don't like this at all.
I think they do a good job, and like I do have to think partially like how much of this is maybe intentional based on the fact that like they have gathered the most punchable male faces on earth for this film. And what you said, there was a part where when they initially land on the bug planet and it's nighttime, they're fighting.
Oh
You
yeah,
were like, I can't tell who is who,
yeah,
and
I
I
had
was
no
like,
idea.
it is hard. It's hard to tell, and I was part of me was like, there is something to be said about the fact that like the whole what the movie is saying is that like the military just views young bodies as all the same, like no face, no name, just they're young bodies for the
Yeah.
fight.
I couldn't I was
And
like, I
so
don't know
like
who's even fighting right now. I was like, who is this?
right. I don't think it's intentional, but I think in a weird way that that kind of works for me. There's a couple of things in this movie that I don't think are intentional that kind of work. I just looked up something interesting because the big satire in this movie, like the thing that it pokes fun at so much is like again like the military and how they view young people and war. I mean, obviously it's like a critique on war. Um, there's a part in the beginning where the dad, who is a very hammy actor, that was not good, but he has a pretty good line that I honestly agree with, and it's something a lot of people talk about. I don't think it's too controversial, but he says something about like it should be illegal for them to go into schools and pluck kids out of classes for recruitment, and I kind of agree with that. I kind of think that the that's a big topic of conversation is that a lot of times kids are pulled in, and it's interesting that this movie was made in 97 and some then there was still a thought process like that that existed that
I
you know they go in, they pluck these kids out of maybe not the best circumstances, and they promise them free tuition, or they promise them whatever it is that they need at the time in exchange for their life, and they maybe don't view it as the fact that they are giving up their life for x amount of years and anything could happen.
this actually brought back a memory that I didn't even now remember, but when I was younger, I think it was like maybe 10th grade or something, there was like some career fair at the high school, and I just happened to talk to like the Air Force people because when I was younger, like I always wanted to be a pilot. I never wanted to join the military at all, even though most of my family ended up doing it, but I always wanted to be like a pilot. I thought that was cool. So I was just talking to him about like the planes and the jets and how like cool it was and stuff, and I got some information just because I wanted to read on it. That a recruiter nonstop called my house until my dad had to like scream at him to stop calling or like threaten
Yeah.
him. It was so aggressive. And this film really touches on how aggressive the recruitment is for the military, almost like you have to in order to be like, even though in the film you have to join to be a citizen, it almost feels like you're not like a real citizen or doing what you should be doing for your country if you're not joining the military.
The choice to use the word citizen is really interesting because I don't know if they're implying that you're not like a US citizen if you're not a part of the military, because the word civilian doesn't imply that you can't like his parents. It's not like his parents weren't US citizens, but it's like they're using this purposely, this word that feels like a thing you need to have, like
Well,
citizenship.
well, in the film, it says once that like you have to be a citizen to vote or you have to be a citizen to run for public office.
Okay.
So that is
That
stated.
makes
So
more
like
sense.
I don't understand it, but I know at different parts of the film they did say you have in order because when they were in the shower, the one girl was like, "Oh, why do you want to be here?" And she's like, "Well, I want to run for public office, and you have to be a citizen." And then they were talking about voting stuff and like citizen rights versus civilian rights, and it was interesting. They didn't touch on it a lot, but there was like a couple subtle things that you would have missed if just kind of brushed over.
How about that shower scene, buddy?
So many butts. There were butts on
Butox
butts,
everywhere.
butts on butts on butts. Man, Verhoeven does not shy away from the butts.
What a scene to watch when you're a young
I
man.
don't remember. I don't even. I don't know if like I'm sure when I was 6, I thought that was cool as hell, but like I didn't remember that scene. Now I saw it. I was like, what is that? Why is there so many butts? So many butts.
I I remember the first time I watched it because my parents were in the other room and they heard me go "Auga!" and then they ran into the room and my jaw was on the floor and my tongue had rolled out
Yeah.
and my eyes had popped out of my head. No, so I think yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense because it would be a very kind of fascist thing to be like, if the US said, here's the deal, you can only vote moving forward if you've served in the military, you can only serve public office if you've been in the military. It is a way to strong arm people into joining
Yep.
combat and stuff. So I just found this interesting. I probably should have done a little more reading before we started the record, but I'm definitely going to read about this after the fact. I knew that the movie was based on a book from 1959, I believe
Interesting.
here. Um, yes, 1959. However, I was curious, like, does the book make the same points or kind of what's the deal? And largely, the book has been cited as being militaristic and fascist and um, has some sketchy stuff about race and gender in it. So I do think, without reading too much forward, again, and I apologize, I should have looked into this a little bit before we recorded, but I do want to give credit to Verhoeven and whoever the script writers were, which again I should know. Give me a minute. John Edward Newmeyer. Credit where credit's due for taking a source material that is allegedly militaristic and fascist and all of these things and kind of flipping it on its head
Yeah.
and using that source material to create something that explicitly goes against those themes. um yeah, I don't know, like the second half of them, so all I feel like all of that satire is kind of like mostly in the first half of the film, and then the second half of the film, the reason it feels so different to me is that it is just kind of straight up sci-fi action. I don't know that there's a lot of like commentary on what it means to be in the military, or like what it means to when at the end of the film when they pull out the bug brain, the brain bug, and they're like Zim pulled out the bug brain and all that kind of thing. Uh, Based on Rico's reaction and stuff, I did kind of feel like there was this feeling of like somebody else getting Rico's credit.
Hmm.
Like like somebody else like it kind of just tells me that like it's always a competition. It's not fair. You're never going to get cited for the things that you did right or wrong.
So the funny part about that is Zim was the drill
But
instructor from when Rico went to basic, and in order for Zim to get into the war, he had to get downgraded to private, and so
that's why I was so confused.
yeah, so then like so basically like Rico started as a private, made it all the way up to a lieutenant somehow, like in like less than 6 months. Basically, this timeline, if everything adds up, it was only a year from when he was like in school, like
Also
academy,
crazy.
and then 6 months. I would assume 6 months, maybe a year more, because that's after the first fight on Clendathu. So maybe it was a little bit more. So you're talking maybe a year. Now he's a lieutenant, and the guy that was like helping him get through is now a private, and he ends up saluting him. He's like, "Okay, sir," and it was such a weird moment where I was like, "Damn, war is crazy out there in
Yeah,
Clendathu."
I messaged you when we were watching it because I had a case of your issue where I was like, it's just this guy in a helmet, and I was like, I couldn't tell. For some reason, I thought the drill instructor was the guy that came out of the military base that was like in hiding when they go to the base and they find all of the dead people and they're
Oh
waiting for the
no,
bugs to
okay,
come attack.
yeah, I see that. No, that was the general.
Yeah, so I got those two swipes mixed up, but and then at the end of the film, it does have this thing of like, so even though Rico has been kind of um denied his achievement, he's like he takes Ironside's role. God bless Ironside. We've decided that this is a
So
Michael
Michael,
Ironside podcast from now
I
on
love it.
because he's in everything we watch. Um, he takes on Ironside's role, and you see him. He's in like an ad for recruitment, and he says, "Come on, you apes, you want to live forever?" And he says Ironside's line, and it ends with them just like going to war, and it does kind of end with this idea of like war is never ending. You just watch this huge spectacle that you would expect to be, in any other movie that would be like, oh, war is over, we won, but it just keeps going. It's
Yeah, it's
ongoing.
going forever, man.
So I guess what do you it's hard because you probably have this memory of this movie as a kid. I'm glad we watched it, but we did both kind of have a little bit of a mixed reaction to it. So what's your takeaway from Starship Troopers?
I don't know, man. It's tough. I went into this movie excited to watch it because I had such a good memory of it as a kid, and I was when I picked Starship Troopers, I was so excited to watch this film. And then as I was watching it, I was like, "What the hell is this shit?" I was like, "This is garbage. Like I was like, I don't care about any of these characters. I don't give a shit who's dating who. I don't care. And then like eventually it started to grow on me again. And I was like, okay, once I got into like combat, it's just that first hour of the movie is such a trek to get through. And like Neil Patrick Harris's character there when he's like the funny guy coming in, and then like all of a sudden he's some psychic colonel that's like leading the army. It was just how like the
His
time
character
was
disappears.
yeah.
His character disappears like for the second half of the movie, and then when he shows up because they are in different roles, they just have to like salute each other and stuff. And there's no, again, I don't know intentional or not, but there's just no, that character's arc ends the moment that he becomes a military scientist. He has like no
Yeah.
personality, you know.
I mean, like they spent so much time making us want to care for these characters and then just completely abandoning it an
Yeah.
hour and 5 minutes into the film, which is fine. I think the second half of the movie is much better than the first. Um, I don't know, man. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's a good film. 2 hours is it's too long. It's way too long of a
I feel
film.
the
It does
length.
not need to be 2 hours. I think if it was cut down to maybe an hour and a half, an hour 15 even, like cut
Yeah.
off 30, 45 minutes of this film, it'd probably be a really, really good film and it would stand the test of time. I don't know. I mean, the effects were really good. I thought it was cool. Like the movie looked good for it being filmed in 1997. Like it looked like the future. The bugs were cool. All
Bugs
the,
are cool.
I mean, just the gunfire and everything. It was a really nice, technically done movie. It just didn't sit well with me for whatever reason. I don't know. I think it's
It happens.
because it's either there was two things that happened. I think it was weird because it was my first time. I actually went out and saw a movie for the first time in over a year, and I was so excited because I was like actually at the movie theaters right before we watched this. I watched the new Mortal Kombat movie, and having that experience of like watching a film when I was a kid and then watching a remake of it in like theaters, which is something I love to do, is go and watch movies and finally being able to do it again. I was so like so
Right.
happy. And then I go in and watch a movie that I remember being really good as a kid, and it was like the opposite effect. So I was like in this weird like gray area of just like I don't know how to feel right now. I think
Yeah,
it was
for
just the
sure.
timing of everything was weird for me.
And I do want to talk to you about Mortal Kombat too. I also watched a movie that is in theaters that I want to expand the horizons of at the movies a little bit. There was a time where we would talk about maybe if we'd watch something else that week that we would recommend or something. So I do want to touch on that. In terms of Starship Troopers, I I I logged this in Letterboxd. Um, I said I didn't know it was possible for a movie to be this smart and this dumb at the same time,
Yeah.
which is like it is smart in the dumbest possible, like in the broadest sense. Like this is intro to satire 101. You know, Verhoeven is his stuff is on the nose, but I like it. It is like cartoonish kind of, and it is there's a sense of humor to it, and I enjoy it. Overall, I do think it's a good movie. I enjoyed watching it. I think like, I agree with you. Cut the character stuff out. Cut like 20 minutes of combat at the end. Um, you know, just really slim this thing out. And then I have three things that I think would make this movie better. Uh, and not that I know better than Paul Verhoeven, but I think if I was gonna make like if I was gonna remake this, there's three things I would do differently. The first thing is when we see the newsreel at the very beginning of the movie from the war that's going on when they first land on the bug planet. I would have that cut like at the end when they're like, "All right, like you know, like we're out." I would have it show that that's being filmed on like a sound stage, and that's like not a real battle happening, but it is them filming propaganda essentially to to rile people up, to make people like agree with the fact that we're going to war with these
Yeah, that'd be good.
species. Um, the second thing I would do is when he accidentally gets that officer killed during their combat training, I would straight up have they ask him, they're like they ask him like why he did it and all this stuff, and he's like, I wanted to win, sir. I would have them reward him for that. Like I would have them reward him for the fact that he was so competitive and wanted to win that this thing happened because that is the mind. I mean, we see the drill instructor before this. He like maims two of his students.
Yeah, it's
He
just
like throws a knife into some guy's hand. He breaks someone else's arm. They clearly don't have a problem with their own people being hurt unless it's a PR problem.
mm,
So like, why not have them reward their student who got somebody killed because he has this "I'll do whatever it takes to win" attitude.
yeah, no, 100%. I
Um,
agree.
and then the last thing that I would do, and this is the only major change, and this would drastically change the movie. So I'm not saying that this would make a better movie for watching for entertainment purposes, but um, if you cut down that combat and you have them land on the planet, and like I said earlier, they're filming these big combat scenes to kind of make people feel like they're really engaged with the war and what's happening and get them fired up. What if they land on the planet and they find out that this species that they're supposedly at war with isn't even adversarial? Like they're just it's a species trying to live their life in a species that maybe, again, like you brought up, like we joked about it during the movie. We were like, those bugs have
Those
oil.
bugs
But
have
like,
oil, baby.
what if we found out there was resources on that planet and this group of people finds out that they have totally signed up for something like basically policing and execution of a
Yep,
species that doesn't care about their existence at all. And then I do care about the characters because you start to see who accepts that responsibility
yep,
and who blindly starts to execute, this other race. I think that that would be a really interesting and thoughtful movie.
100%, man. I agree.
Um,
Those are some really good changes.
so interesting stuff. I do recommend it. I think that if you haven't seen it before, I can't tell you that you're going to be like blown away, but I think that I guess I don't know who to recommend it for because I also think that if you saw this as a kid and have nostalgic value attached to it, I also can't say you'll be blown away, but
I think
it's
if
a
you
fun trip
haven't
down memory lane.
I think if you haven't watched it at this point in now your life and you're mid 20s to 30s, you're good. Just blow on by it. I don't think you need to watch it. Just watch this podcast, listen to this podcast, and you're good to go. That's all you
Yes.
need to. That's all you need.
Listen to us. Watch us.
Watch
Join
us.
us. We know better than Verhoeven. No, that I agree. The satire is so broad that I don't think anybody. No, this movie's not going to radicalize anyone who's like 40 years old.
Yeah,
They're not going to watch this and be like, "Oh my god,
I think if you've
war
already
is
made it,
bad."
I think if you've already made it this far in your life and you haven't seen it, just don't. But if you're like in your formative years, like teenage years, I think it'd be a fun because it was like I made a joke. It was like watching. It was like Saved by the Bell. The early years, Saved by the Bell, Saved by the Bell. The college years, Saved by the Bell goes to space. Was Starship Troopers. Like that had the whole
Yep.
cast pretty much just going into space. And I think if you're like a teenager, I think it'd be a funny film to watch. But I think if you're our age and up, there's no reason to go back and watch this film. I think there's plenty of other films, and this is the first time I've said this. I mean, I haven't really been too critical of films, but I think I should probably start if I'm just going to speak my mind because
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you need to watch it if you haven't seen it. I think most people have already seen it at this point.
It would be a good. I was thinking the same thing, that it would be a good. It is still serves as a good introduction to satire. If you, like you said, if you are kind of in those formative years and you're like figuring out kind of your ideologies and how you view the world, I do think that it is a helpful film to watch. And on top of it, I do think the second half of the movie succeeds as a good, strong, violent sci-fi action movie. So
Yeah,
it's no RoboCop.
you could
It's no
almost
RoboCop.
start right at an hour and just watch the rest of the movie. And I think you'd be fine.
Yeah. It's definitely. I think it's probably my least. It's probably at the bottom of my ranking for right now in terms of the
Same.
movies we've watched. But a good film. It's a Verhoeven film. If you watch RoboCop, you can definitely connect the dots. So that being said, Jimmy, tell me about Mortal Kombat, my man.
I will challenge anybody to a Mortal Kombat if you hated this film, is all I'm saying. It was such a good movie. It was well done. The fight scenes were awesome. The character arcs were great. It received some hate, man. It received a lot of hate, but I think it was from people that didn't. I have been a Mortal Kombat fan since out of the start, watching the original movie, watching Annihilation, playing other video games. I have been a Mortal Kombat fan. And I think if you don't understand the actual like lore of Mortal Kombat, then this film might have not sat well with you because they never really. I don't want to do too much spoilers because I don't think you've seen it, but
If not.
um,
Although
I want to
I
avoid
will say
spoilers
I'm
since that's a fresh movie. I want to avoid spoilers because this isn't a film that came out in 1997. It's a film that came out two days ago. So I want to be careful on what I say, but I think it was really well done, and I loved it. It was gory. They put in a lot of like fatalities and stuff. They really like spoke to the real reason because of the game. It was cool. I had a lot of
is
fun.
there any nod to the like did they do the video game thing where they were like fatality?
Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like in like one part is like Kano wins. Like Kano is like Kano wins. And he's like holding this heart. And then it was like, and then at one point someone else is like flawless victory.
That that rules. That's like
Yeah.
walking the line between fan service and just being,
It was
so
so,
much.
and it was like perfectly put in there. It wasn't cheesy or like, oh, it's like we have to do it. It was just like in regular conversation. They were like flawless victory.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
That's good. So here's my question then. As somebody who doesn't have a lot of connection to Mortal Kombat, would I still enjoy this? Like, is there still value to watching this?
yeah. So I think like you don't really need to understand much about Mortal Kombat to enjoy this film because it's not like it's basically starting over again.
Yeah.
It's a brand new take, so you don't really need to watch the original and Annihilation to understand it. It's just a brand new take on it, and they're planning to make 3 more films after this. So this is just the foundation of it. So I think it was pretty well done to start a new franchise off.
Interesting. The Mortal Kombat extended universe.
Which
Fascinating.
I even told Bird afterwards, I was like, I would give up every single Marvel movie that's planned for one more Mortal Kombat film.
I don't blame you. I'd give up those Marvel movies for a lot of things. Someday maybe we'll do an episode. Maybe we'll do an episode in honor of Scorsese. When Scorsese passes away, we'll do an episode about our least favorite Marvel movies, or superhero movies. I rented last night. They do the theater at home thing. I rented Nobody with Bob Odenkirk.
Oh,
Um,
I saw the poster for it. I want to see that.
it is fun. I'll start off by saying overall I enjoyed myself. And Bob Odenkirk is hard not to like. I've enjoyed watching Bob Odenkirk since Mr. Show, um, which is a sketch comedy show from HBO in the 90s with David Cross, and I think he's a funny guy, and I have not personally watched Better Call Saul, but I know that's where a lot of people do know him from, and I understand that he's great in that. Um, so it is hard for me to not enjoy his performance and just seeing him. The movie is written by one of the same writers as the John Wick trilogy, and it is a little frustrating that it not only is it like comparable to John Wick, but it does straight up steal some story elements from it. Like straight up just lifts some story elements from the first film. Which I guess you can do if you wrote the first John Wick. Like if you wrote the John Wick movies, I guess you can't really steal from yourself, but it is a little bit of a retread. My biggest complaint would be that there was literally a needle drop, like where they input in place like a song that's not a score, like they put in a song over top of there'll be a slow-mo shootout and you'll see people dying in slow motion and then they'll put in like What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong or something to make it like ironic and like literally every 10 minutes. Every
Oh,
10 minutes
that's
there
like
is like a slow motion.
yeah, that's like a
It was
trick
like
that you can do once, not like use it throughout the
if you
film.
take a drink if you take a drink every time they do it, you will be wasted by the time the movie's over. Um, which is so that was like frustrating to me. Like by the end of the movie, I was like pretty over it. But if you're going for just over the top action sequences, you're gonna have a good time. It's hard not to
Yeah.
like those. They're well done, definitely. Bob Odenkirk's good. Wish the cast was a little better utilized. They have RZA in this movie, and they have Christopher Lloyd and Michael Ironside, and they don't really utilize. I mean,
Ironside's in
Michael
it?
Ironside doesn't do anything. Ironside owns the business that Bob Odenkirk works at, and that's all he does. I
Ironside
know
does
he's older,
everything.
so
Ironside does
I'm
everything.
not I'm not expecting him to get an action sequence, but like he does nothing. He's unrecognizable. It's kind of a bummer. Overall though, like you know what you're getting into with that movie, and if that's what you want to see, you're gonna have a good time. So I would like to recommend one last thing before we sign off. I would say that if you're gonna only rent one movie this weekend, skip Nobody. I watched the 1981 Brian De Palma film Blowout with John Travolta and Nancy Allen. It's available for rent on YouTube. It's $3.99. I thought that I wasn't a De Palma guy because I watched Body Double a few weeks ago and didn't love it the way other people do. This movie is a masterwork. It's so good. Premise is just that John Travolta is a sound man who works for cheap horror movies. He goes out and records wind or records bird sounds, whatever he needs, sound effects guy. And he accidentally records a political assassination, like the sound of it, and he witnesses it. He rescues Nancy Allen, who was in the car when it happened. And then there's this cover up, and there's this political party trying to cover up. I shouldn't say that. There's an entity trying to cover up the fact that this is a political assassination, and so he goes on this mission to the photographs and get the film of the accident and match it up with his uh little sound clip, and to prove to people that there was a gunshot and that it was an assassination, because everyone is saying that it was an accident. And
Wow.
it's just a great movie about, it's a great thriller, and it's a great movie about conspiracy, and super fun to watch. Couldn't recommend it more highly. So Red Blowout, watch that movie.
Nice,
We
dude. Hell
reviewed
yeah.
4 movies today.
Speed run. That was a good
Speed
one.
run.
That's all I have, my
That
friend.
was good. Thank you. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching At the Movies. If you'd like, you can join us on Patreon. We have a new $3 tier that will allow you to watch the movies with us in real time. So we sync these up. I think going forward, Jimmy and I have to talk about this after the show, but um, I think we're probably might just switch these to Saturday nights because it felt pretty good
Yeah,
watching the movie on a Saturday night.
I like that a
So
lot better.
that being said, we watch movies on Saturday nights, and we would love to have you join us. You can kind of get our reactions in real time, and you can interact with us while we watch the movies, and lots of other cool stuff. So check us out on Patreon. Check us out on our socials. If you haven't, please like and subscribe to the video. Um, we hope you've been enjoying the show, and next week we're going to be back with the Big Lebowski. So going to be a good one. Make sure you tune in for that. And until then, remember, the only good YouTuber is a dead YouTuber.